Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Fustall, and today we will be discussing leadership ethics and what it means to have ethics as a leader and what benefits that can provide for your company and the steps you need to take to become an ethical leader. Now, ethics is constantly in the news. These are just some of the headlines from the New York Times on Saturday, February 23rd, that have to deal with ethics. US Catholics wanted a Vatican response on sex abuse. Is the new proposal enough? Was I wrong to tell a friend's partner about his infidelity? Ethics inquiry opened over Justin Trudeau's actions in bribery case. Now, all of these headlines have to deal with ethics, but different parts of ethics. The first one deals with religious ethics as well as legal ethics. The second one deals with interpersonal ethics. And the final one is legal ethics again, looking at governmental ethics. So that's more of a focus on organizational ethics. As we continue, we'll be diving into some of the differences between ethics structures on the next slide. But what is ethical leadership? So the word ethics comes from the Greek word ethos, according to Milik, Lipnik, and Trevik, the Greek word ethos means a characteristic spirit of culture or an era or a community as manifested by its beliefs and aspirations. So, in today's society, ethics, from that Greek word, is a code of moral principles and values that guide an individual or an organization, or even a society, with what is right and what is wrong. So, this third point is talking about can be bound by a law or by societal standards. So, thinking back to those headlines, the bribery case with Justin Trudeau, that's very much a legal ethic question. Was what he was doing ethical, or was it okay in the eyes of the law? But if you remember the second headline, which was questioning whether it was right to tell a friend's wife about his friend's infidelity, now that is a societal standard because nobody's going to be arrested for having an affair or telling their friend's wife about the affair, but it is a societal ethical issue, determining whether it was right or wrong for him to do that based on what is okay in society. So, what we are going to be focusing on a lot though today is not that societal standards, but organizational ethics. And organizational ethics is based off of the values of the stakeholders and of the business. So, what the customers and what the stakeholders and investors in the business care about what is right or wrong. If that is understood, then it creates the culture of the organization. Whatever the values are and the beliefs are and the goals are of the organization help create the culture. So that's how ethical culture can be created. If ethics are at the center of the organization, then that's going to be what the culture of the organization is like. Milik, Lipnik, and Trevik continue on by discussing what is leadership. Leadership is persuading a follower to do the goals a leader sets. Now, the key part about why we're going to be focusing on leadership ethics today is because the relationship between a leader and the follower is always within the context of the organizational goals. So if the leader has the ethics of the organization as their goal, then their followers also going to have those ethics as their goal. So more than focusing on organizational ethics, we're going to be focusing on leadership ethics because If a leader is ethical, that means that the organization is going to be pointed in the ethical direction, and the workers underneath the leader are going to be ethical as well. Finally, ethical leadership. According to Milik, Lipnick, and Trevik, it is the responsibility of senior leadership to ensure an ethical work environment. And they do this through a process of asking questions about what is right and what is wrong, and also setting the example for the people who work under them and work around them, as well as showing what their important beliefs are to the customers and investors. So the two main goals of ethical leadership is to state explicitly the ethical background for each decision. This way, the coworkers and the subordinates and the customers all understand why each decision is being made in the ethical context. This really ensures that leadership is taking ethics into deep consideration during each decision, as well as provides a background knowledge for each decision, and that each decision is well thought out. The second goal is to create and justify ethical principles. By creating ethical principles for the organization to follow, that means that each ethical decision is easier to make because you already have decided what principles you want to follow. Now, according to Bachman, leadership ethics is not always the focus within organizational ethics. Business ethics often focuses on regulation and codes. According to Bachman, many books about organization and business ethics spend maybe 2 pages on leadership ethics, and ignore it for chapters upon chapters. However, it has been shown time and time again, according to Bachman, that ethics programs without ethical leadership are less successful. If you don't have leaders in place that care about ethics and what is right and wrong and making the decisions that are good for the company in an ethical manner, then ethics programs within those companies are going to fail because the leaders don't care about them and the workers don't care about them. So the second section of this presentation is how to be an ethical leader. Now that sounds like a very big topic, but we've talked briefly about it, but now we're just going to dive a little bit deeper. First, I want to start off with this quote from Bennis and Nannis. The leader is responsible for the set of ethics or norms that govern the behavior of people in the organizations. Leaders set the moral tone. And that really reflects what we've already said in this presentation so far and what we're going to dive in more. If the leaders set the moral tone, whether it is ethical or not, the decisions that they make and the actions that they take set the tone for the rest of the business. So, what does an ethical leader look like? According to Milik, Lipnick, and Trevik, these are some personality traits of an ethical leader. An ethical leader is humble. They are concerned for the greater good of society. They're honest and straightforward. They have that integrity factor. They fulfill the commitments that they make, again, focusing on integrity. They strive for fairness in the workplace, so that is something that they consider is right. They take responsibility for their actions, whether the decision ends up being good or bad for the company. They show respect, not only to their fellow coworkers on their same level and for the people above them, but also their subordinates and the customers and investors. They encourage and develop others. Ethical leaders understand that if they are not building up their employees, they are not making ethical decisions and not encouraging ethics within the greater company. They serve others. So looking back at servant leadership theory, serving others helps encourage better growth. And finally, they stand up for what is right. And that's the basic underlying principle of what an ethical leader is going to be doing. Ethical leaders also have a certain set of values, defined by Milik, Lipnick, and Trevik as the 5 Ps. The first one is pride. An ethical leader wants to be proud of the work that they put out, which is key to making sure that their employees are also proud of the work that they put out. This helps lead to ethical decisions because you want to make sure that the right decision is being made so that you can take pride in the fact that you helped create that goal. The second P is patience. Patience is very important value for ethical leaders to have because sometimes ethical decisions can take longer than an unethical decision. Though sometimes the easiest way to do things can be unethical, so having patience in the process of doing something the right way is key. Also, if a company is transitioning to a more ethical standpoint and more ethical goals, that can be a process. It doesn't happen overnight, and so patience is also very key in that aspect. The third P is prudence. Prudence, or cautiousness, is a virtue because it means that the leader is taking time to exercise caution and making sound judgments in the practical affairs of everyday business. The fourth P is persistence. Ethical leaders have to be persistent about making sure that they are doing ethical decisions by checking in on their employees, by teaching others about ethics constantly, and making sure that nobody is slipping up. And finally, the fifth value of an ethical leader is perspective. An ethical leadership ethics requires a forward-looking outlook, looking at what is best for the company in the long run. An unethical decision might be the easiest way to do things right now, but it can cause issues in the future. Next, we're going to be looking at some principles of basic rules of conduct for ethical leaders. This is also by Milik, Lipnick, and Trevik. The first principle they talk about is the leader principle. So an ethical leader obviously needs to be a leader. They need to be the spokesperson and a member of the company. They need to be integrated into the organization. And because they are a spokesperson for the company, their deeds have to benefit the company. The second principle for an ethical leader is the constituents principle. That means that the leader respects their coworkers and perceives them as people who share the common goal of bettering the organization. They also understand that their coworkers are individuals, and that can also lead to some different ethical decisions because what is right for one person may not be right for another, but a leader will understand that and look at the broad ethics of the organization and see how their constituents' ethics fit within those broad ethics of the organization, which allows people to still be individuals while still serving the broader goals of the organization. The third principle is the outcome principle. A leader connects the values of the stakeholder as well as upholding ethical legitimacy. They want to make sure the stakeholders are happy, but they create their company with ethics in mind. So the mission, the vision, the values, and the goals are all outlined within the understanding of ethical ideals, according to Milik, Lipnick, and Trevik. The fourth principle is the processes or skills principle. An ethical leader must be open to creative ideas from their coworkers and subordinates because ethical decisions sometimes need creativity because, like I've said previously, what is easiest or what is most straightforward may end up being unethical. So creativity is key in ethical decision making. The fifth principle is situation or context principle. So moral judgments have to be made within the context of the current times or the current situation of the organization. And finally, the last principle is the ethics principle. A leader understands that leadership and ethics are integral and integrated into the company. So the final slide today is going to be the main steps of leadership ethics and how to do it. Now, these 3 steps are from Villanova University. So the 3 steps are be the example, champion the importance of ethics, and communicate. So let's dive in deeper to each of these 3 steps of leadership ethics. So the first one is be the example. According to Villanova University, a leader needs to remember that actions often speak louder than words. Coworkers, employees, and customers are going to judge the person judge a leader about how they act rather than what they say. So an ethical leader needs to practice making ethical behavior and ethical decisions to the subordinates so that they earn respect of their peers. According to Skeet, one of the ways that ethical leaders can be the example is by asking the right questions in a situation. So making sure that the ethical decisions that they desire are being done by asking the right questions. Another way that an ethical leader can act ethically is by creating systems designed to motivate ethical actions. If the system of the organization promotes unethical decision making more than ethical decision making, then the leader has to change the organization in a way to reward ethical behaviors. So the second point, according to Villanova University, is to champion the importance of ethics. Now ethical leaders need to champion the importance of ethics by including ethical standards and other ethical issues into the everyday conversation of the workplace, either through ethical workshops or just making sure that they are conscious of it. So University of St. Mary's, it talks about encouraging a conscientious environment. So they need to be leadership positions, people in leadership positions need to be aware of what is expected of them. So holding regular meetings to convey the importance of ethics is key. And then finally, the third one is communicate. So communication needs to be an important skill of an ethical leader, because if ethical leaders are not able to communicate why ethics are important or what ethical standards the organization has, then ethical decisions are not going to be made. This also needs to be done through guiding policy development, so communicating what policies need to be made and also creating clear boundaries according to Skeet. So the big concept is ethical leadership creates an ethical organization. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. If you have any questions, you can email me at rafestel@eiu.edu. Thank you for Slide Carnival for the slides. And here are my references.